Hello, everyone. We are not so many people yet, but I think we should start anyway. So I'd like to welcome you to this webinar. My name is Henrik Reinhøj, and I'm from the University of Copenhagen. And this webinar is organized by the European Research Universities, the League of European Research Universities, LERU, and particularly the Digital Educational Thematic Group. During November, there will be a lot of focus on different subjects in different online arrangements, both on collaborative research, digital education in action, e-assessment, e-certification, open education, and this is part of the video and media track. So the presentation here is open for teachers and researchers and IT people, academic staff and universities, anyone actually. And they are related to video and media subjects. And the main focus of it is that we share some experiences here. It's not an idea to make it very theoretically heavy, but we share some interesting experiences with among colleagues here. So you'll get some insight into how universities are changing their education and gaining some success of digital approaches in blended and online education. We have three presenters today. I will just be moderating this. First, we're going to hear Jelger Kroese from Leiden University. And after that, Thomas Felix Ginn, also from Leiden University. And the third one is Marjolaine Haagsman from Utrecht University. Jelger will first talk about affective, embodied, and multimodal learning by using augmented reality in medical education. So I think I will give the word over to you, Jelger.
Thank you, Henrik. I'll just start up my presentation to share the screen. Are you able to see the presentation?
It's coming up.
Yes?
I see it now.
Okay, great. Then I'll start. So hi everyone, my name is Jelger, and I'm here together with Thomas, my colleague. Hello. He will give a talk after me. We both work at the Center for Innovation at Leiden University, and I'm going to give a small talk about AR for medical education. I will first briefly explain what we do at the Center for Innovation, and then shortly explain what augmented reality is, and then I'm going to do a showcase of our latest project. So the Center for Innovation, we are part of the Leiden University, and our mission is to help prepare the university for the digital future by identifying and exploring technological trends in education and research. So this means we work together with partners internally and externally of the university to develop projects that are being used in the real world, for example, in education. And we do that to really assess what the value is of these new upcoming technologies in order to advise the university if it's worth investing in such a technology to scale, to use it on a bigger scale. And at the same time, we hope that the products we develop can have real world value already. So part of our center focuses on new media, and we work with different forms of media. We started by developing online courses using traditional video, and in the past 2 years, we started developing more newer media approaches using VR, virtual reality, and augmented reality. So how we work, when designing an experience, it's really about designing a learning experience. And we have three main components important for that. It's, of course, the learning component. How do you design an experience so people can learn from it in a nice way? And then you have the component of media and technology. And it's really the integration of those three components that make up for a good learning experience that is not about just giving a tech demo or something, but really about a proper learning experience. So today we're going to talk about our VR and AR projects. And just to shortly clarify what we mean with these terms, we have here three different words: VR, AR, and XR. So what are these? I think this slide shows how you could see this world. So extended reality is the overarching term. It encompasses both VR and AR. And then as subcategories, you have virtual reality, which are experiences where you are completely immersed in a virtual world. You wear these goggles through which you cannot see the real world anymore. So it's completely immersive. Thomas will talk about it after me. And augmented reality, this is a technology where you also see virtual content, but you at the same time see the real world. So the virtual content and the real world are mixed with each other. And the project we have developed uses the Microsoft HoloLens, and it's the device you see here in the picture. This is an augmented reality device, which means that you can see through the glasses, and the glasses project virtual images in your in the center of your vision. And this device scans the environment to recognize its surroundings, and it can connect virtual objects to objects in the real world. So you get a setting that, for example, looks like this. These people wear a HoloLens, which means they can see each other, they see the room around them, but they also see a model, in this case, of a building that is virtually projected on the table in the room. So we developed a project with this, and it's called Clinical Presentations Dyspnea. So dyspnea means that patients with shortness of breath. And we developed it together with our partners, the Leiden University Medical Center, in order to use it for education of their students that become doctors. So we started this project with the following educational challenge. We have the process that doctors need to learn, and it's doing physical examination of people with shortness of breath, using, among other methods, a stethoscope. And the challenge is to bring this to a form that it can be used in a classroom setting for students to learn it. And currently that's being done, like as you see in the right picture, that student has a CD with different sound recordings of lungs, and he has to listen to them, and he watches a screen with some images of medical diseases. And this way is quite disconnected from the real practice of a physical examination. And this process of physical examination, we call it clinical reasoning. And students have to learn quite some activities with this. They have to recognize abnormal lung sounds, so by listening using the stethoscope. They have to do a tightly structured process of physical examination where they have to talk to a patient in order to get all the info they need. And they have also to integrate other information sources such as ECG scans, medical history, and finally they have to, of course, diagnose which disease a patient has. So this is quite a complex process to learn. So why did we decide to use the HoloLens for this use case? Well, firstly, it allows us to create an authentic simulated learning environment. So students don't have to anymore learn from a computer screen, but they can be in a real environment interacting with patients that act like actors that act as patients and while seeing their co-students. The HoloLens allows them to train their perceptual and psychomotor skills, which is very important in this case because it's quite a difficult skill to attain, to recognize the different lung sounds which can be quite similar and difficult to recognize. They also have to train the communication with the patient, which the HoloLens allows because the students can see through it. And we also chose to use the HoloLens to help students understand 3D anatomical structures. Like a standard 2D computer screen doesn't allow you to see 3D, and the HoloLens does, which gives a different perspective on these anatomical structures. So for this project, we combined some aspects of the HoloLens, some features actually. And one of those features is spatial sound. So like I explained before, the HoloLens is able to project a virtual object in space that you can see at a certain location in space, but it can also project sounds on a location in space. So you could have a virtual speaker on a desk, which seems to produce a sound that also comes from exactly that position of the desk. Another feature of the HoloLens that we used is object tracking. So you can have a pattern. For example, here you see a paper with a little pattern. And if you look at it using the HoloLens, this picture uses a cell phone, but the process is the same. The HoloLens recognizes it and can use it to connect virtual content to it and track the movements of this piece of paper. So what is the experience that we built? I think this picture illustrates it well. So we have a setting where we can have an actor that acts like he is a patient, and you have students that wear a HoloLens, and the HoloLens can project an anatomic model of the torso on the body of this actor. And by using a stethoscope with a tracker attached to it, like you see the cube in the picture, they can listen to sounds of the lung. So by placing this tracker on the body of this actor, audio recordings of a patient are triggered. And this is interesting because now in one classroom setting, the students can compare and review a lot of different disease cases and disease types, which is not really possible in the actual work because it's very difficult to get patients that are willing to cooperate in this educational setting. And it's also very expensive. So this is another example of the picture. It can also be used without an actor. So students can listen to these sounds while the hologram floats in free air. So this is the basic principle. So it's actually a tool that doctors can use to train these skills of listening to lung sounds. So now is, of course, the question, how is this integrated in the classroom? How does this constitute this application to really teaching doctors to do this whole complex process of diagnosing people that come to the doctor with shortness of breath. So we made the following structure. We have a part of the classroom, we integrated into a lesson where students work in a group on an assignment. And in this assignment, they first read the patient medical history.
Jelger, you have about 2 minutes to finish.
Okay, thanks. I'm almost done. After that, they interview the patient actor. So the actor comes in and they interview him in order to get more information about his complaints, why he has shortness of breath. After that comes a part that happens inside the HoloLens experience, where the students will be able to listen to the lung sounds that are by placing the stethoscope on the body of this actor. After that, they are able to view extra information about this patient. So by looking at CT scans or ECGs. And this information is given outside of the HoloLens experience. And all this information they have to combine in order to make a diagnosis. After the students as a group have made a diagnosis, they will view and discuss the actual anatomic model together with a teacher, where he can highlight certain areas in the model and show which structures of the lungs are modified when in certain disease types. And after that, the students together write a plan for therapeutic and diagnostic policy. So this is the basic idea how it's integrated into the classroom. So it's important to note that only the yellow parts of this experience happen in the HoloLens, and the rest of the lessons happen outside it. So it's a blended form of education by this. So currently we are in a state that we have a prototype finished, and it will be now integrated into the classroom and tested in order to see what the learning effects are. And the possible learning effects are that it offers situational learning. So they learn in an authentic but safe environment. Embodied learning, because the role of the patient's body really has a role in this experience. It's interesting to see how that affects the learning. Another effect is the collaborative aspect, because multiple students can work together in groups while interacting with virtual objects. And also multimodal learning, because the application integrates different cues, visual, auditory, and haptic cues. And lastly, we're also assessing how this method of education affects the spatial awareness of students, because it really offers models in a 3D vision. Okay, so that's it for my presentation. You can find more info on our website, newmedialab.centerforinnovation.org. And yeah, that's it. So I'd like to give the words. Oh, yeah. So
thank you. Thank you, Jelger.
Are there any questions?
Yes, I would just say something about the question here. You're most welcome to write questions and comments in the chat. If you're in doubt, then when you move your mouse, you can open a chat to the left here. So you can write your questions there. If you need to speak, you may also be allowed. I think we have Yvonne to help with that if needed. So let me see if there's any questions here. While people are writing, maybe Jelger, you said you have developed this, and then you're showing in the end that there's a potential for learning this and that way here. But what feedback. Do you have any feedback from the students right now? Already, those who tried it? What do they say about it?
Well, we didn't. We weren't able yet to test it with big groups of students. So we tested it with sessions with only two students, 2 or 3 students, and that was mostly during the process of development. So we're getting some feedback of how the interaction works. Are they able to recognize certain sounds in the lungs based on these audio recordings? So I think the current version of the application still has to be properly assessed using students. We still have to do that. But we got already some feedback from them that it's seeing in 3D is very new for them, and it's a great improvement because a lot of students find it difficult to learn anatomical structures by looking at 2D images. So I think they also like the playful aspect of it to interact with a hologram and make it more playful than the classical setting where you listen to a set of sounds only.
Can I ask a question also?
Yes, definitely.
This is Anne-Marie from the University of Copenhagen. So this
Hello.
is more, thank you first of all for your nice presentation. And a question more on the production side, development side. What would it require from a university to develop this in time and money and personal, if you can say so, and skills? Is it a huge thing to start up, or how will you explain it? How much time? What kind of skills do you need, and what equipment?
The time needed, of course, really depends on the type of project that you develop. Like we currently work in a team with about how many people working on the new media team? Six people. And for the development of this application, I have mainly been working on the app development side, and before that we worked in teams together with a person from us that works on the learning experience design, and we closely collaborate with the team of the medical center to firstly create a design that is nice and that's a proper design, and after that I started working on that to develop the app, and I worked in it over the course of about 30 to 40 days, more or less like that. But it's this is also a process of attaining knowledge for ourselves because this is a very new medium. But I hope this gives an indication.
Maybe I can add something as well, because it's a very specialist thing, right? The HoloLens. So we are very fortunate that we have Jelger here, who knows how to code for this platform. But there aren't many people like that. So I think that is the first part. You have to find someone who is capable of either developing these skills from nothing or already has some experience with that. We already developed another HoloLens app before this. And I think Jelger was able to take a lot of experience and maybe also some tech from that app into the new app, which of course saves development time. But if you're starting out from scratch, I think you're looking at a longer development cycle. Maybe what would you recommend? Do you think it's better to start with a smaller project and sort of work your way up, or?
I think so. I think it's the first most important thing is to get a good design, because if the core of the design is good, you can make the project work. And I think it really helps to get a good design, to get a good mixed team of people with different expertise. So I think definitely someone with either game or app design background, and a learning specialist and maybe also
a good project manager.
And a good project manager.
That's a core team. And then you need, if you're working with a professor, you need a professor who's really willing to invest time in this, because the first version of the app is never the right version, so it goes back, and then you have to do feedback, and then you're really developing it together. And I think money is one concern, obviously, but the other one is time, and then specifically the time of people who don't have a lot of it, and that's always the professors and the teachers. So they must be dedicated to the project, otherwise I don't think it will be a success.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question, and thank you for the answers. Jelger, thank you for your nice presentation. There's a few more questions here in the chat, but because of time, we will continue, and I would like to ask Thomas to give your presentation instead. Maybe, Jelger, you can later on answer those questions somehow. Let's see how much time we get in the end. But now Thomas will talk about escaping the classroom and the virtual reality experiences for higher education at Leiden University. Please go on, Thomas.
Yes. Okay, hello. I'm Thomas Ginn. I am a colleague of Jelger. We both work for the Center for Innovation, which is, as Jelger said, a part of Leiden University. Jelger talked about the augmented reality side of our projects. I'm going to talk about our experiences with creating VR learning experiences. And I'm going to start with a few questions that we kept getting from our professors that we work with regularly, like this one. This was someone who taught safety in a lab, and every year he gets around 1,200 students. And he is really sort of struggling because he said, my students need to learn about dangers of a lab, but they've never seen a lab before. And the problem is, of course, that how do you explain something which is such an abstract concept that you actually first need to be a little bit familiar with a lab, but you're not allowed to go in before you do the safety training. It is a catch-22. And we have the same situation at archaeology, where they get more and more students every year. And it used to be a small study where they would just go to excavation sites, but now they have over 250 students starting next year, and they are really worried because they cannot take them on field trips easily, because you cannot watch 250 students walking around on an excavation site. And the third one was about teaching safety measures. And the question was, how can I teach that without putting them in an unsafe situation? And I think for these three questions, we really found a solution in VR. So I'll talk a bit later about how these are the solution. But first, I want to take you back to where it started, which was in 2016, 2017. And we started with three VR projects, these three that you see here. The first one was really the very first try. It was part of a MOOC that we made, and it was filmed on a heritage site here in the Netherlands. And it took people who could not visit a heritage site to this site so they could sort of hear and look and feel what it was like. That was a nice experiment, and we thought, okay, what can we do that is practical for students on campus? And so we worked together with the Leiden University Medical Center, and we filmed an entire kidney transplantation. So we had a live donor and a receiver. And first we filmed the first part, which is where they extract the kidney from the donor. And in the second part, they put it into the patient who needed a new kidney. And that was and is still being used in several educational tracks of the Leiden University Medical Center, such as internal medicine and in the surgery department. And then we were thinking, how can we take this to the next level? Because video is nice, but it's also a little bit passive. Maybe we can make it more interactive. So we created a third project with the Red Cross, which was the first interactive project that we did, which was video-based, but with clickable objects. And from those lessons, we set up a pilot, a call for all kinds of educators around the university to come and participate in this pilot to see if VR could offer something for their education. Because of course we can think of a few examples where it would be useful, but who knows better than the teachers that ran into these problems that I mentioned earlier. So right now, this year and a little bit last year, we developed these 9 VR apps. Some of them are video-based, just video-based, but most of them are interactive as well. We have 3 for the same partner that we worked with on the kidney transplantation, and these are for interns who come to the medical ward for the first time and have little to no experience with it and are a little bit unsure of themselves, and they wanted to boost their confidence and also teach them some important lessons because the first few weeks these interns are always lost on the ward and need a little bit of help. So we made 3 apps based around what it is like to be on the medical ward. But the bulk of the pilot that we're doing is down here, and it's with almost every faculty of the university. We have one pilot project going on. So for instance, the one that I was talking about, the field trips from archaeology, that is down here. I'll show you a few images later. Here's the lab safety one. So this is about training 1,200 plus students each year on the safety in a lab. So not just from a book, but also by visiting the lab. And we have several ones such as elderly care and aggressive behavior amongst patients with dementia. We have one teaching new teachers what it is like to be in front of a diverse and complex class situation. And we have one with the anthropology department about how to use 360 video and the VR as an anthropological tool. This is an interesting one. I'll show you a picture of that later. And the final one is with the Faculty of Science, where we are trying to look for new ways to visualize remote sensing techniques, which can be very abstract and difficult to understand. So here are a few pictures. I cannot show you, unfortunately, the VR part, then you would need a VR headset, but this gives you an idea. This is the dementia experience, and here you see grandpa who is, is getting too much input from his family. Everyone's there for his birthday. There are colorful things. Lots of stuff is going on, and he's about to become, have an outburst and make everyone question what's going on. This one is the anthropology app, which is about mining in Ghana, and illegal gold mining in Ghana. It's an interesting one because here we taught the professors how to use the medium, and they could mount the camera to one of the miners and go down into the mine, which you can't do because it's very dangerous. So for the first time, they get a real feeling of what it is like to be down there and what the culture is of the miners amongst themselves. And the funny thing is they quite quickly forget, that there's a camera there, and they, start acting naturally. So it is for them a very unique opportunity. Here we see the lab safety one. As you can see, it is slightly shifted, so that means that it is in 3D. This is the archaeological dig. And finally, this is the virtual patient that we are developing for the medical ward. This is a mock-up, so you can see that they are timed and they get different choices, and they have to get used to making choices very quickly, which can be very stressful for them in real life. So we want to give them an opportunity to do it before they enter the ward. I'll skip this one. The thing that we struggle with, or maybe that is the biggest challenge, is balancing these 3 fields within these apps. So we have 3 fields. We have an educational part, a creative part, and a technological part, and they have to all be in sync. Otherwise, these apps don't work properly. So for the education, we have some standards that we adhere to so that we give them a solid, theoretical foundation and, of course, a good education. So we can't just do anything. But we come from a filmmaking background, and we know that storytelling techniques and aesthetics are very important when you want to take someone on a journey and really motivate them to learn more about a subject. So we try to push our professors to not just show data, but also make it accessible in a more narrative form. And finally, of course, there are some limits to what you can do with the current technology. You have very fancy VR headsets, but they are very expensive. And if you have, let's say, 1,200 students, you have to find a solution, maybe find a less technical advanced solution, but one that works because you need to address such a large volume. What it boils down to is several important aspects that we have found out about working with VR, but I'm going to highlight these three. The first one is affective learning, which means that VR is very good at provoking an emotional response from its user. So you have this headset up, you're secluded from the world, you're in another place. So if you want to show something like, a lab catching on fire, which is a dangerous situation, of course, and which will make you panic and make your adrenaline rush, you don't get that when you're learning it from a book, right? So VR is an excellent medium to show sort of the affective components of learning. And the same is in the operation, the kidney operation, where it can be a very disorienting experience if you go there for the first time. And, better to do that in VR than when you're in the OR for the first time. The second part is it's a natural part of VR. Because you're, closed off from the world, because you're somewhere else, it's a very immersive way of learning something. Because there is no distractions other than what you put in the VR experience, and it really drives, whatever you're trying to teach, really drives it home. And the third part is also quite unique. It is a simulation insofar as that you can do the same thing over and over again. So maybe the first time you're very scared when the lab catches on fire, but the second time, of course, you know that it's going to happen, and then you can maybe, your emotions are a little bit less, but now you can stand back and observe the situation. And this provides a safe way and a repeatable way of learning about a certain type of situation. I'll skip this one and go to the results, because we have some results. Of course, we're doing analysis. We're giving our students evaluation forms. And we are also putting some analysis techniques inside our VR apps. So that includes eye tracking, that includes the use of, the clicker, the buttons that you have on your remote. And we get some interesting responses out of that. And I've collected a few quotes that I like very much. The first one, because you're experiencing and seeing for real, you got a lot more information to go on with the paper case study. This is, of course, a little bit logical, because if you're reading about a patient with dementia, or if you're seeing the patient with dementia, that is a very different situation. And it's not to say that the paper case study is worse than the VR case study. They have different aspects that make them ideal for a certain type of learning. So the paper case study, you get to calmly read through all the bits of information that are relevant, whereas the situation where someone maybe really gets angry is a good training, because that's going to happen in real life, and the paper case study is not always relevant at that point, because you have to deal with a situation that occurs spontaneously. This is a favorite of mine. I've never been more conscious about how much you learn from observing your surroundings. It's really an unconscious process. So this person is consciously realizing that it's unconscious. But what, of course, they mean is that now they sort of start to understand that by observing the surroundings more and more, because you can repeat an experiment, you notice how much you actually learn from your environment. And if you do it a couple of times, you get better at doing it unconsciously. But you take that with, if you're trying to diagnose a patient, for instance. The third one is a simple one, and that we see a lot. People say, I've gained more confidence about certain things. So in this case, it's about going on the medical ward. They've gained more confidence because they know where to go. We rebuilt a medical ward in VR, so they know how to go from place A to place B, or where they can find medical equipment. But we see that in other apps as well. And that's, we think, a very important part, that you boost your students' confidence before they have to go into the real world. The final one, this is about immersion, of course. It really feels like you're there. We also hear that a lot. It's very realistic, especially the way we do it, because we film at real locations. So we record in 360 degrees. We record in a lab. We record in an operation room or on an excavation site. And for many students, it's the first time they get in touch with that reality, because they're not ready to go into the field yet, but they really want to know what it's like. And it's a very good sort of taster also for them to know what it's like, what they're working towards. And the final thing that I want to show you is that this is one of the first images that we have of our eye tracking in the apps. It's not completely perfect, as you can see, so we're still working on making this accurate, because you can see that all these all these dots are slightly off. They should be more to the right and to the bottom. But this is a way for us to track where people are watching, and that we can couple it to what they're answering on the evaluation forms. So if some person, if we ask them, were you looking around a lot in the VR experience, and they say yes, and then we look at this data, we see that maybe they weren't looking around so much. Maybe that was just the impression that they got, but in fact they were looking at only one or two parts of the whole image. And that can be interesting, because then you know how people perceive themselves in VR, but also because you know how they are navigating your app, and maybe you are not reaching the desired learning effects because they're using it in a different way than you expect. That was all that I had for now, so I'm glad to answer any questions if there are any. How do I
Thank
go
you
back?
very much. Thank you very much, Thomas, for a very nice presentation. This is very interesting. Are there any questions? You might just turn on your mic. There is one here. I think it's from Anne-Marie. How do you integrate the VR activity in your courses?
That's a good question. It's not unlike the way that Jelger described that they are integrated in real courses, in the real curriculum as we have it now. Often what we do is we have a warm-up session. So students come in and they practice a little bit with VR. Then they get, for instance, a case, and they have to read a little bit about it, or they get a small discussion up front. So they are primed, to know what they can expect. But we don't give away any details, so it remains a little bit of a surprise. Then they go into VR, and they go through the app mostly as we have planned it. And finally, when they come out about 10 to 15 minutes later, we always have plenary discussions after that, because we find that everyone takes something different away from the app. People see something different all the time. And the social part is crucial for the desired learning outcomes in this case. And what happens a lot is that people wear the VR goggles, and they come out, they discuss, and someone says, well, I saw this. And the other person goes, oh, I didn't see it. And then they put the goggles back on, and they go back in, and they go through that part of the experience again. And they say, oh, interesting. And then they get into this whole discussion. And first we were afraid that the teacher might really need to sort of, pull the lesson along and really need to sort of feed the students. But we find that they do a lot of the discussions on their own, and the teacher really only has to guide the discussion a little bit and sometimes point out a few things, but mostly students among themselves find the most interesting parts. And of course, we think about this at the start of the development. So it's not that we develop a VR experience first and then later think about how we're going to integrate this into education. We actually require our teachers to think about it before they even come up with an app idea. So, you know, when they come and say, we want to develop this app, then first question is, well, where are you going to use it? How are you going to use it? Because an app is nothing on its own, you know, it really needs to be embedded in a good learning environment. Are there any disadvantages? Yes, there are some. I don't know if there's time for another question, Harry.
Can I say something? We have 21 participants on the YouTube channel also, and they are around 30 seconds delayed, just for your information.
Oh, okay. Hello, YouTube. Are there any disadvantages, was the question. Yes, of course. As with anything, there are disadvantages. Firstly, it's mostly a very long process to develop one of these applications. So you really need a strong case before you start doing it. And it is unlike, for instance, the HoloLens or a regular class session, it's a lot less social because you're in your own world, basically. So that can be a disadvantage. There are ways, of course, of remedying that, but that is clearly something that you would maybe want, that the people are together or not. It can also be an advantage, but mostly we see it as something that needs to be overcome. The quality can be less good than, of course, the real world because, you know, there is video, there's compression, there are technical issues. So yes, there are some disadvantages, but we think clearly the advantages outweigh, you know, the disadvantages. That's why we're really pushing it, and we're going to carry on with it in the next years.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. It's really interesting to hear about. So, but time is running, so let's go to the last one. This is Marjolein, who will talk about interactive videos enriched with collaborative features. And Marjolein Haaksman is from Utrecht University. So are you ready to tell us about it?
I will see if I get the screen on. Okay, yes, can everyone see me? Okay, perfect. So this presentation is a bit different. This is about enriched videos. So I'm a PhD student in higher education, but I'm also a teacher in biology at the University of Utrecht. And I will just show you a case study of how we enriched our videos. So what you see over here is a bit of a timeline. So in 2013, we had a more traditional lecture. Then in 2014, we started using video clips. And since 2015, we started to enrich our video clips. So for the traditional lectures, this is just the traditional classroom we used to have. So you probably know this setting. The teacher explains the content in a lecture, and then students, they solve their problems somewhere at home. But at that point, this was in 2013, and my colleague, who's already retired right now, he had a few difficulties with this approach because he was always doing this for a long time. So he thought the lecture was becoming a routine, so he just wanted to try something different, anything, basically. And the other thing was that we have a classroom with a lot of students, so right now about 300 students. And students find it very hard to focus in this large lecture room for a long time. And then the teacher also aimed to have a more in-depth understanding of assignments. So at this time, this teacher decided to start flipping the classroom, which most of you probably know about this method where you actually flip everything. So instead of listening to the lecture at home, right now the students listen to the lecture. They listen to the lecture at home, sorry. And they did that by watching a video clip. And then they solved the problem together with the teacher in the classroom. So we used this video, and we got a lot of students were very happy with this because they said they could rewind the video whenever they want. And when we asked them whether they much rather like those video clips, 61% said yes, and 20% of the students said, like, oh, doesn't really matter for me. So we thought to continue with video clips. And students also said, like, okay, I can rewatch the lectures whenever I want. I can watch it in my own time, etc. So they were very pleased with it. But at the same time, we could also see something else happening. So what you see over here is the number of observations through the time of a video clip. This is a pretty long video clip. Right now we have shorter ones. So this was a video clip of about 22 minutes. And we always could see that the number of observations went down across this video. And then we also, students said that they missed the contact between the teacher and the students. And we also got this statement from a student who said that he thought it was a disadvantage that he could not immediately ask questions and that he wanted more interaction between the teacher and the student. So at that point of time, we heard about a few ways to enrich videos. So there are a lot of different ways to enrich videos. Maybe you have seen it for advertisements. You see like this specialized advertisement where you have to click, and based on what you like, you get a different advertisement. So in the advertisement world, it was already much used, but now you see a lot of different tools to enrich videos. So students can either like things in the videos, or they can write notes within these videos. You can add quizzes sometimes, but it all depends on which tool you use. So teachers can sometimes ask quizzes. Sometimes it's possible to have like this search engine where students can really search within a video towards a certain topic. There are tools available where you can add messages, or where students can ask questions in a kind of chat box. And then there's also this possibility of learning analytics, where teachers can actually see what students are doing and they can use that. So these are just a few things that you see in some tools. So the number of companies that provide those tools, they are massively increasing. When we started, I could only find a few, and now there are many, many, many of them. So how does that look like for our course? So this is how our course looked like. And now students listen to the lecture more actively, which means they have more of an interaction together with their fellow students. So what they can do is they have to answer questions within the videos. I call them in-video questions, but they are kind of quizzes that a teacher can add. Students, they can ask questions to each other or to the teacher. They can even press this confused button, which basically shows when they don't understand something. So it's more for themselves to label what they do not understand. And they can also take notes. So they did it together with their fellow students. But the nice thing for me as a teacher is that there is also connection in what they do at home and what they do in class. Because I can see what students actually answer, what their questions are when they press this confused button. And I can typically mark these things, and then I use that to start my discussion in class. So the idea is that I have a more in-depth discussion together with them. So this is the tool we use. It's called scalable learning, but like I said, there are many more different tools. So I'm not really there to advertise a certain kind of tool. So what you see over here is the video. You see a few buttons that students can use. And on the right, there is this whole timeline that starts to enroll while being interactive with this video. So I made a short screencast for you to see how it looks like. It's just a silent screencast. It's also in Dutch, so most of you wouldn't be able to understand it anyways. So I would ask Henrik to just share this link, and you can watch it for 2 minutes, and then I'll come back to you.
You can find the link in the chat here. I'm also trying to do that on YouTube.
Great, thanks.
Should we go to questions?
There's a link where you can actually go to this screencast. Should be in the chat.
The idea is we take a break while you watch this for 1 minute more, and then Marjolaine is going to continue.
Okay.
So I guess I should continue due to time constraints, but I hope you get an idea of this. So
Sure, go on.
I go on. Cannot see if everyone's there. So I also made a screencast, but I will just share it to you in the chat. We won't watch it right now for you to see how it looks like for a teacher. So what you saw right now is just how a student goes through this clip, and you see that the student can actually click on this on these buttons, can ask questions to either the teacher or to everyone. But the interesting thing is also that a teacher can add questions within the video as well. And what you saw is that this video just suddenly pops up. The student has to answer the question at that point, and then the video continues. So the setup of the course, I just quickly want to go over this because you have to embed it as well, of course, is that the student watches this video clip at home. And then they do a digital test based on the content of the video clip. So they also do this at home. And then when they go into class, there's more like a group, in-depth group assignment that they do together. And then based on all of this, what the students did, then there is a teacher-guided discussion. So as a teacher, I look into how students watch this video clip. So what kind of questions did they ask? Were they confused? What were their answers? And I also look to the answers of these digital tests and group assignments. And I use that to start my discussion and only discuss that students find difficult. So I have a few tips and tricks based on this. So the first thing is, this is not special for interactive video clips, but more for video clips in general. The idea of this flipping the classroom setting is that students watch the video clip. So if they don't watch it, your whole learning system doesn't work. So what we did is to really add watching video clips in the timetable, so students really know that they should do it. They don't have to do it at that very same time, but they are more aware of it. The other one is to embed the enriched video clips within your education. So do something with it, and also use the interaction within your in-class discussions. One very important one I noticed is that if I don't show how I make use of the input of the students, then my students will also not do it anymore. So what I always do is I explain during my in-class discussions, like, okay, well, I saw that you guys have problems with this. I saw you had this question on that. That's why I will discuss it right now. And when I do that, especially when I do that in the first session, I notice that students will start using these tools more. Another thing is that you cannot be there 24/7 into this chat forum within the video, so I always have to schedule time. Important thing is to design in video questions that are not too difficult, because if they are too difficult, then students will just click through it because they think it's annoying because the video quits. And the last one is that you should be aware not to repeat the whole video, because then there is no added value to the video clip anymore, and then students won't even watch the video clip. So I see it's almost time, so I quickly want to say a few more things. One is, of course, I evaluated this, and the very interesting thing is that students are really in front of this interactive platform. They really like it. But when you see what they actually use, they use they barely ask questions, and they barely use this confuse button. But what they like most are these in-video questions that I insert within the video. And when I also asked them whether they would like to have less in-video questions, then almost everyone said no. I totally disagree with that. And this is very interesting. So I actually want to give you a bit of a teaser, because I already said I am a PhD student as well. So I quickly go to this slide, the last slide. So I also wrote a paper, especially on these video questions, because I was wondering whether they trigger students and help them understand the theory more. So I just wrote a paper which is currently under review. So if you're really interested in it, you have to wait a bit. But here I actually talk about whether it affects students' perception and their conceptual understanding, and also whether their viewing behavior is different. So with that, I would like to conclude with my last slide. If you want more information, then you can always contact me or send me an email as well. And I'll be in the chats, of course, as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Marjolein. Thank you for a nice and interesting presentation. There's already some questions that you see here in the chat. For example, let me see, where does it start?
Oh wow!
Which tool? They asked about which tool it is and if they are uploaded into a specific LMS.
Yeah, I use the tool Scalable Learning. It's just www.scalablelearning.com. And currently, this is still for free. It's actually from Sweden. It's from Sweden, and they just want to still see how teachers use it. So currently, it is still a free tool. So you don't need anything for it. You can just make it yourself. But as I said, there are many more. Let me see. I also see a question about taking notes in a video. How does that work? that means that they can that the notes are in the same timeline as the video. So they write notes, and you see it in the timeline. And if they actually press these notes, then immediately they go to that section of the video again. But these notes, they will be saved for the students only, so other people won't be able to see the notes. Yes, there was no sound in the YouTube link, that's true. That's because it was in Dutch. And let me see, another. Yeah, I also get this interesting question about how do you combine the use of videos and reading material. This is a very difficult one because since we started, we are using a textbook in this course. It's a first-year course, so students really go through this textbook. And what I notice is that students read the textbook less than they used to do, although we do say them that they also have to read it. Now they say that the videos are more like a nice summary that are easy to watch. It saves time for them. But yeah, you can doubt about how do you want to, whether you want them to focus more on the book or on the video. This is always a difficult one. Another one, the remark I get the most from my students when using. Yeah, students, they have the feeling that they have to watch all the video material in preparation for the exam. My students don't, I don't know if they have the feeling that they have to, but I know that they do. This is something they, and they really like it because it's for them like an easy way to go through all of the material, but I can definitely see that they go through the material beforehand, yeah. Yeah, I get another feedback on textbook, but it's the same what I already said. Yeah. So I guess I answered all of these questions in the timeline.
Yes, thank you very much for that. Is there any other questions from or comments from anyone? Then you are welcome to put on your microphone and speak up.
Do they that's like which biology course do you think she does this for?
I don't know if it's in the biology.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? No, I couldn't hear it.
I don't think, is someone trying to ask a question? I don't think there was a question, but someone turned on their microphone. Is there a question?
Maybe I can come back to one of the questions that was asked before and I wasn't able to answer. One question, the projection in space, are they really 3D? If you project, let's say, a model of a schoolhouse, how accurate can you reproduce a given object? Yeah, so objects in augmented reality really appear to be 3D. So if I would say project this T mark on the table, a holographic model of it, I have the feeling that it would be exactly in this position, and I can wrap my hands around it and walk around it, look at it from different sides. So it really gives the same 3D image as you would have with a real object.
And it's also attached to the real world. So if you say place that hologram on the table, because it scans the surroundings, so it knows that there is a flat surface here, it will stay there. You can walk out the room, come back, and the T-mark will still be on the table in the right orientation. But that's an interesting one to realize that, and yeah, that's the thing that the HoloLens can do.
And I think one other question, I'm not sure if I understand it correctly, it's I wonder if it could be useful for material history, e.g. the materiality of schooling. So I'm not sure who asked that question, but do you mean
the live stream?
Oh, it's from the live stream. Is it? Do you mean that you look at the history of real materials? I think in that case, looking at artifacts, for example, of cultural artifacts, it could be very interesting because you would be able to, for example, recognize real artifacts and augment them with virtual information, for example. That's a use case I could imagine, that you look at an old bone from a dinosaur and you augment it with information about the years and about the context that it was found in and about the actual animal that it was connected to.
This already exists as well in some cases, like you have, well, maybe not exactly what you're describing, but you have the app there where you can take a picture of a plant or a leaf and then it can tell you what plant that is. It's an app for your phone, but there's no reason why you could not integrate that in the future in an AR headset, right?
Yeah.
Or you could also say, okay, there are foundations of an ancient building here. It used to be a temple, but I only see, these big blocks lying on the floor. But if I put on my HoloLens and it scans the environment, it can project on top, accurately on top of these blocks, what the temple would look like. So you can walk in and look around and maybe see some decorations, stuff like that. So in that way, materiality could be studied by bringing it back into reality, but then as a hologram.
Thank you very much. That last question was from Marianne Hilfenberger, I can see from the live stream here. So if there is no more questions, then I think we will close this session. I think it's been really interesting to hear about both augmented and virtual reality and the use of commenting activity around the videos here. But I think we will close it now. I see a couple of people signed in very late here. Maybe the time difference was misunderstood, but we have been doing this for 1 hour now. But yes, as I think Armin is pointing out, next week we have on the same URL actually, but this time at 3:30 we have another section. We have another program. And there, Thomas Weatherby from Munich will talk about inverted classroom and peer learning, background preparation and delivery. And another one is Joachim Siegwart, also from Munich. We'll talk about making videos interactive with H5P. And the last one will be Ralph Meulenbrooks from Utrecht University, who will talk about produce short instructional videos with Lightboard technology. So welcome back next week at 3:30. And thank you everyone for listening and participating today. Thank you to the speakers who gave some very nice presentations. This whole thing has been recorded, and there will be a recorded version will be presented on YouTube somewhere. There's a Slack. I think maybe Armin is quick with a link to that Slack place here, but there will be a link to today's presentations. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye bye then.
Thank you. Bye bye.